Hello everybody and welcome once again to another edition of In Pit Lane. Well, of course, Australia has a proud tradition of motorcycle racing at the very top level. World champions like Wayne Gardner, Mick Doohan, Casey Stoner, and people that are racing today like Jack Miller, and soon to be joined by second generation racer Remy Gardner at the top level in MotoGP. Well, tonight on the program we're going to talk about a fascinating new project to find the next generation of Australian motorcycle racing champions, and it's being done in a whole new different way using technology, algorithms. Yes, algorithms. Very, very high-tech stuff. We're going to find out about how technology and the whole sort of artificial intelligence and the use of high-level data is being used to hopefully find the next level of Australian champion. And also, if you're a motorcycle racer yourself, a young motorcycle racer, hey, you might be able to take advantage of this offer as well. We're going to be joined by a guy called Mark Mcveigh. He's the man in charge of a group called MotoDNA, and they've got a new project called MotoCHAMPIon, and we're going to find out more about that a little bit later on in the program. But right now, I mean, look, once again, nothing happening locally, well, at least not on the track anyway. There is stuff happening off the track, and we'll catch up with some of that a little bit later. But right now, in terms of what's happening with rubber meeting roads, let's talk about the weekend of motorsport internationally. This is the In Pit Lane Motorsport News. Max Verstappen has delighted his home crowd with a dominant win in the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. Starting from pole position, Verstappen led the field into turn one and from that point was never under any real threat. Mercedes had no answer to the speed of Verstappen, leaving Lewis Hamilton to come home in second, with only a bonus point for fastest lap to cheer him up after a weekend of constant abuse by the vocal Dutch fans. Valtteri Bottas, who finished third, provided one of the few highlights of a painfully boring race when he looked set to defy team orders and go after the fastest lap late in the race. It was another disappointing weekend for Daniel Ricciardo, who managed to out-qualify his teammate, but was passed by Norris early in the race and came home out of the points in 11th place. It's now official. Valtteri Bottas is heading to Alfa Romeo, leaving the coast clear for George Russell to take the second spot at Mercedes. A new chapter in my racing career is opening. I'm excited to join Alfa Romeo Racing Orland for 2022 and beyond for what is going to be a new challenge with an iconic manufacturer, Bottas said. Alfa Romeo is a brand that needs no introduction. They have written some great pages of Formula One history, and it's going to be an honour to represent this mark. It's understood that Bottas refused an offer to replace Russell and Williams, leaving that seat open for Albon? De Vries? Anybody? Jack Doohan's chances of taking out this year's FIA Formula 3 Championship have taken a major hit after his main rival won last Sunday. The result means Dennis Hauger extends his gap at the front of the championship by a further 13 points to 43 points, with only 65 available to score. Doohan made a poor start in Sunday's main race, but recovered to come home in 4th place. Tim Wilkinson won for the first time in more than 5 years and came through at the biggest event of the season, racing to the funny car victory at the prestigious 67th NHRA US Nationals at Indianapolis. Wilkinson beat home Ron Capps, denying Capps his first US Nationals victory. In Top Fuel, it was Steve Torrens who rocketed past Brittany Force in the final round with an impressive 374 at 522.13 kilometres per hour to claim his second US Nationals win. Eric Render's Indy domination continued when she won the Pro Stock title for the second straight year with a whole-shot win over Kyle Koteski. And on two wheels it was Eddie Kravic who picked up his first victory of the season by taking out teammate Angel Sampi in the final round to win Pro Stock bike. This is in the new-look DTM. The New Zealander scored 55 of a maximum 56 points on offer in Spielberg, and in doing so took a big step towards the top of the championship. A timely return to form saw Denny Hamlin claim the checkered flag for the first time in 2021 to win the Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington, the first round of the NASCAR playoffs. Hamlin held off Kyle Larson in a final lap fight to the finish line, with Hamlin taking the win by a mere 0.2 of a second. 4 playoff drivers suffered big hits in the standings, with Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, William Byron and Michael McDowell all crashing out of contention at the track that's too tough to tame. And this is the Mission R, the latest vision from Porsche Motorsport. With this concept study of an all-electric GT racing car, the company is revealing what customer motorsports could look like in the future. According to the company, the Mission R is on a par with the performance level of a Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. In qualifying mode, the all-wheel drive car has a peak system output of more than 1,000 brake horsepower, with about 680 horsepower in full race trim. The car accelerates from 0 to 100 kilometres an hour in less than 2.5 seconds. The battery sits behind the driver and has a total capacity of 82 kilowatt hours. This means that it's designed for a sprint race format distance of about 25 to 40 minutes of racing. The battery can be recharged in about 15 minutes. Although the car is a concept and is not likely to race in current competition, look for some styling cues towards the company's new LMDH Le Mans car for 2022. If it looks anything at all like this, I for one won't be complaining. And that's the In-Pit Lane news for the week commencing Monday, September the 6th, 2021. We'll have more news next week. When we come back, we're going to learn all about the new project, MotoCHAMPION, with our guest Mark Mcveigh. This is In-Pit Lane. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In-Pit Lane. Well, our guest tonight is Mark Mcveigh. He's the man behind a new scheme called MotoCHAMPION. His company's called Moto DNA. They're specialists in training both riders for the racetrack, but also on the road. Mark has experience in the world of engineering in MotoGP level, also even in supercars, as you will hear as well during the interview. Caught up with Mark a little bit earlier today and asked him all about MotoCHAMPION. And as I said, we started off by just finding out what is exactly MotoCHAMPION. Well, Mark, thanks for joining us. First of all, can you tell us about MotoCHAMPION? What is it?
G'day, Brett. Yeah, thanks for having me. MotoCHAMPION. So our company Moto DNA is a sister company of our Riders Academy. So it's been running in Australia for over 10 years, and a lot of our coaches and come from sort of racing backgrounds, as high up as MotoGP. And we also have engineers that have worked in MotoGP as well, including myself. So MotoCHAMPION came about when we decided that when we're teaching people how to ride, it can be very objective. So what we wanted to do, when we're racing and when we're in MotoGP, we use a lot of data, and the data is, it's the fact, it's the laws of physics, and there's no arguing about the data. So we came up with a method of using data to measure and grade riding skills. So if you imagine that, if you have a learner, they're essentially going to be a 0 with the riding ability. And if you're Rossi, you're going to be 100, and then everybody else is kind of in between. So part of what we were doing was training juniors, and we've had kids go on to race in, the Australian Championships and overseas and World Superbikes, Moto3, Moto2. I never had anybody in MotoGP just yet. And so with MotoCHAMPION, essentially what it does is it takes this method of using data to measure and grade the motorcycle rider's skill, and then it places those riders on leaderboards. So essentially what you can have, because we're using skill level rather than a lap time, you can have riders compete against each other that don't even need to be on the same track. So in theory, you could have a rider in Donington Park compete against a rider in Phillip Island just by using the rider's skill. So to launch this, we've developed MotoCHAMPION in Australia, and in partnership with Motorcycling Australia, and it runs until the end of November. And it's a rewards-based system. So the champion from MotoCHAMPION receives a fully sponsored ride in the Oceania Junior Cup, which is a feeder class into the MotoGP program. And that's sponsored by Bendix Brakes, who's paid for that. So it's a kind of good time to launch something like this. It's a little bit different. But with, lockdowns and COVID and stuff like that, it is sort of like 100% COVID friendly. Riders can ride by themselves in a figure eight configuration. So it's only 35 meters by 15 meters. So they can mark it out somewhere. It doesn't have to be a racetrack. It can be in a training ground or in a car park somewhere, private land. So it's very, very low friction, very low entry to get involved.
That's interesting. I mean, we've seen a lot of during the lockdown, a lot of sort of e-racing and sim racing and things, and I think that's what sort of flicked my mind on it. That this is not sim racing. This is real world racing. But how do you gather this data? I mean, how does this data get gathered, and how does it get transported back to you for analysis?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Brett. And there is a lot of synergies with gaming. We have a product that we're developing that ties in with games, where the avatar in the game can actually represent the rider's real world riding skills. But that's probably another interview. But what we've done now is we've been, I guess, developing this for about 4 years, and we've been working with Yamaha Japan, based down at Sydney Motorsport Park. They've got a new innovation hub there, which they have developed, along the same lines as Silverstone, where technology businesses are based at the racetrack. And that's been fantastic for us because our workshop is right there at Turn 1 at Sydney Motorsport Park. So we've been developing that technology using really highly instrumented motorcycles. So things like measuring steering torque, acceleration, braking, lean angles, suspension, all those different things you would expect, eye tracking for vision. And using that hardware, then we've been able to analyze, the riders who come to the Riders Academy at Sydney Motorsport Park. And we've got a, wide variety of sort of riders that come just to do street learning. They're learners. So there's, in around, 0 to 10 on their score, right up to Australian superbike racers like our coaches, like Crew Halliday and so forth. So we've been able to get a really good understanding of, what a highly skilled rider does. And of course, having a bike like that with all that instrumentation, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sensors, that's quite a barrier. So what we've done is we've developed the system to work using a GoPro. And the GoPro's actually got really good sensors in them, like 20 hertz GPS, really good accelerometers. And we've been able to derive the behaviors using that more simple hardware. So again, to reduce that barrier to entry for these young riders to get to MotoGP, they can use any bike. So it can be a dirt bike, or it can be, a road race bike, whatever, super motard. And all they need to do is put a GoPro on that bike and lay out the figure eight, 35 by 15 meters, and they just practice on that. And whenever they're happy with their lap, they run 2 laps with the GoPro on, and then they upload their GoPro footage to our website, motordna.com. And our algorithms then take the data. The data is embedded in the video of the GoPro. The algorithms take that data out, and then they analyze that data, apply a grading and a score to the data. And then the algorithms also know what to tell the rider to level up, if you like. So we use a system of flow, which is really just setting stretch goals for the rider. So for example, if they're braking and the bike, most bikes are capable of 1.2 G on the brakes. So if the rider's pulling half a G on the brakes, then the algorithms understand, okay, there's a lot more room for improvement here. So they'll set the rider a 5% stretch goal to apply 5% more brake pressure, if you like, and then go out and practice that until that skill's intuitive. So it measures and grades and coaches the riders, if you like. And then once we've got a score, an overall score, then we can put the rider on the leaderboards, which are built into the platform.
Well, it's an interesting project, and it's interesting the prize people will get at the end of it. We'll talk a bit more about that at the moment. We're going to take a break now here on In Pit Lane, but when we come back, we're going to be joined once again by Mark Mcveigh to find out more about Moto Champion and Moto DNA. Don't go away. You're watching In Pit Lane, C31 Melbourne, and the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, and wherever fine YouTube or quality product is stored. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Pit Lane. Well, our special guest this week is Mark Mcveigh. He's from a company called Moto DNA, and they've got an interesting new project to find the next generation of champion motorcycle racers in Australia, and also to train young riders for the road as well as racing, and that's called Moto Champion. And Mark, before we went to the break, you sort of told us how that was going to all work using the metadata you get from the embedded that's embedded in your video through the GoPro. Is it only something you can do through GoPro, or can you use other sorts of action cameras as well?
Yeah, so the plan is to be able to use multiple hardware platforms. I guess a little bit like Strava, that the cycling and exercise app, they use different watches and phones and so forth. So we had to start somewhere, and we looked at the hardware that's available, and the GoPros are very popular, and they have really good sensors in there. So that's why we picked the GoPro. But you can use other hardware, and that'll be released, in the coming months, different hardware devices as we go along, and just I guess to reduce that barrier so people can take part using other pieces of equipment.
You mentioned that it's a figure eight and it can be basically done anywhere that you have enough room. You also mentioned the fact that speed wasn't necessarily the ultimate goal here. So, what controls do you have, and what concerns do you have, if any, that people will go out and set this out and then go to car parks and that sort of thing, and might just push things too far?
Yeah, well, I guess it's we have a system for training. So when people subscribe up, we have the flow, if you like, system that we use. So the idea is that people ride, just a 5% stretch goals, just a little bit more to level up each time, ride within their ability. So it's obviously with MotoCHAMPION, it's a competition for junior racers from 11 years old to under 16. So part of the regulations are that there is a supervising adult present. For the road riders, we have a different program called Street Skills 101, and that's not for racing. That's to develop motorcycle skills for use on the road.
And I suppose you can ramp this up. I mean, right now you're targeting this at a specific market for a specific project. But I imagine as you develop this technology, it will be something that could be used at the very highest level in terms of being able to people to maximise their lap times, be able to sort of learn from each other and get more feedback about their driving.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trialing the system in Australia this year, specifically targeting the junior racers. But the platform is global, so we're already in negotiations with companies in Europe, the UK, and the States. And that's the beauty about the software; you can use it anywhere in the world. And we do have a relationship with Dorna, who run MotoGP. We were the first motorcycle school accredited with Dorna, probably about a decade ago now. And this is something that we'd love to see, as a sort of foundation, this stepping stone into MotoGP for young riders.
You mentioned that the winner will get a sponsored ride in the Oceania Junior Cup. Tell us about that series. I mean, that's a big deal, isn't it? That's an fully FAM approved international recognised series now, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, it's fantastic, and Australia's been wanting for something like this for a number of years. And Motorcycle Australia have done a great job to set up that series, and already the riders, the champions from Oceania Junior Cup are already in the feeder classes into MotoGP. So it's been approved FIM. It's an official Road to MotoGP program, so it's the real deal. And already, you know, we're seeing riders moving through into Asia Talent Cup, which is really the sort of next step up from Australia. And then hopefully we'll see more riders, you know, heading through to Red Bull Rookies and into Europe from there.
Well, if people want to get involved, if there's any young riders out there or their families watching the program right now and they want to say, okay, interested, how do we get involved? How much is this going to cost? What are the details?
Yeah, so you just head to motodna.com and there's a link there for MotoCHAMPIon, and riders can just sign up there. It's the total cost about $300 US dollars, so just under 400 Aussie, to take part. And riders can upload as many times as they want. At the minute, we've got our the first 5 riders at the end of November get automatic selection into the Oceania Junior Cup selection event, which is kind of cool. And then whoever does the best at the selection event, selection event from those 5 riders, will win the fully sponsored Oceania Junior Cup ride. And we're adding other prizes as we go along. So we hope to fill sort of the first 20 spots with, you know, significant prizes, helmets, tires, and maybe even fit a bike in there as well.
Well, it's certainly an interesting project. I mean, Australia has a very rich heritage of motorcycle races at the world level, going way back into the 1950s, and of course, you know, more recently with people like Wayne Gardner, Mick Doohan, Casey Stoner, and growing right through now to Jack Miller, and soon to be joined at the top level by Remy Gardner as well. Good luck with all of this. Keep us in touch with what's happening, but I'm sure a lot of people will be interested. But for now, Mark Mcveigh, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
No worries, Brett. Thanks for having me.
The show may be over, but the motorsport chat continues with Full Course Yellow, the In Pit Lane after party. We're on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel live most Thursday nights at 9:30, straight after In Pit Lane here on Channel 31. So, why not join us? Yes, once again, a reminder that straight after the program is Full Course Yellow. It's available on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. Really would appreciate it if you'd go there, like and subscribe and click the notifications bell. The more you do that sort of stuff, the more you leave comments, the more you get involved in the chat, the better it is for us, because that clicks up the YouTube algorithm. It sends details to them, and they in turn promote the program a lot more to a lot more people. So we really would appreciate it if you would do those things for it. It really helps us out a lot. Now, next week on the program, something once again involving young people. It's called Beat the Heat. Got nothing to do with air conditioning or insulating your house. It's actually a project. If you remember going out to Calder Park and seeing Smoky One, the Commodore police car that used to drag regularly out at Calder Park. Well, that sort of was the genesis of what's now become Beat the Heat, and we'll be talking next week about Beat the Heat and some exciting new plans they've got as a result of getting some very valuable funding from the Victorian state government and through ANDRA. So that's on next week on the program. But right now, that's all we've got time for. Thank you once again for joining us. Well, hopefully we'll get through the next few weeks and be able to get back into the studio and, more importantly, back onto the track for some actual racing. But until we see you again next week, from everybody here at In Pit Lane, thanks for joining us. Bye for now.